14 spine-chilling and cursed true stories from Reddit. Unexplained secrets revealed. Sarah pulled into her driveway after a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital, exhaustion heavy upon her shoulders. The familiar sounds of the suburb, children laughing, dogs barking, the hum of lawnmowers were eerily absent. A silent dread crept up her spine as she stepped out of her car. The darkness felt thicker than usual, swallowing the light from the street lamps, and her heart began to race. She clutched her keys tightly, feeling the cold metal bite into her palm. Inside her dimly lit home, the air was stale. Liam was asleep in his room, blissfully unaware of the tension that clawed at Sarah's chest. Every creak of the floorboards seemed to echo like a scream, and she felt as though eyes were watching her from the shadows. "Get it together," she whispered to herself, pushing the oppressive feelings aside, but they lingered like a bad dream that wouldn't fade. The next night, the unsettling silence returned. Flickering shadows danced outside her window, melded with the cold autumn air. Then her phone rang. At first, it was just a harmless jingle, but each ring sent a jolt of terror through her. Her fingers trembled, and she debated answering, but something deep inside whispered for her to let it go. "Don't answer," she muttered, confusion and fear mixing in her mind. Desperate for distraction, she turned to Reddit, scrolling through horrifying threads filled with users recounting stories just like hers, unearthing ghostly tales of curses and dark entities haunting sleepy suburbs. One chilling thread titled "Families Disappeared, the Darkness in the Suburbs" struck her hard, recounting mysterious vanishings linked to an abandoned school nearby. Panic gripped Sarah as she read about children who had vanished, stories her neighbors had shared in hushed tones. She glanced out the window, feeling the weight of the night pressing down. Was someone watching her? The world she once trusted now felt hostile, a web laced with secrets. She needed to protect Liam. She reached out to her neighbors, but they only recoiled, eyes darting nervously. It was as if fear gripped them all, binding them together in shared whispered nightmares. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she dove deeper into her investigation, she uncovered unsettling links between her own neighbors and the dark past of the old school. Once comforting streetlights now looked like ominous sentinels watching her every move. Her heart raced when she noticed doors left ajar, and a sound like soft footsteps began to trail behind her. What was happening? Lying awake each night, she listened for Liam's soft breathing, praying that no shadow could reach him. But that fear twisted inside her, gnawing on her sanity. Just as she felt she might uncover the truth, revelations pushed her further into chaos. She could feel the weight of unseen gazes on her. Whispers vibrated in the walls. Were they coming from her neighbors or something darker? The familiar faces were suddenly shrouded in doubt. Who could she trust when the dark past was creeping back into reality? In the depths of the night, she felt she was teetering on the edge of horror, with only the cold grip of terror holding her back from what lay ahead. The next few nights dragged on, each one coated in a layer of chilling dread. Sarah stared at the walls of her home, the soft patterns of the paint twisting into grotesque shapes in her mind. She tried to reassure herself with logic, but reason slipped through her fingers like sand. Reports of homes crumbling in despair haunted her thoughts, families uprooted, lives unraveled. And then there was that old school, standing like a grave marker at the end of her street, a specter no one dared touch. On the fifth evening, Sarah decided it was time to confront the darkness. She couldn't protect Liam, her son, without understanding what lay behind the curtain of shadows draping over their neighborhood. Before warmth could seep into her heart, she donned her jacket, adrenaline sparking her movements. She stepped out. Every creak of the wooden door screamed treachery, but she pushed forward. The street felt alive beneath her feet, the pavement pulsing with a haunting energy. When she passed the Joneses' house, she saw Mrs. Jones standing, unmoving by the window. Her face was pale and drawn, eyes wide with fear. Sarah opened her mouth to call out, but a single glance at Mrs. Jones's face silenced her. Instead, she continued toward the abandoned school, hoping to unearth the truth buried there. The air grew heavier as she approached, thick with the scent of mildew and decay. The windows of the school were dark and empty, like sunken eyes watching her departure. Each step echoed in the silence, finding its way inside her mind. Heart racing, body trembling, she finally reached the front doors. They were ajar, just as her own home had been. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door further open. It creaked ominously, a low groan that seemed to resonate with her own heart. Once inside, darkness swallowed her, and she fumbled for her phone, its flashlight cutting through the inky blackness. The brandished beam glided over peeling paint and overturned desks. A faint sound echoed through the lonely hallway, like distant whispers echoing through long-forgotten memories. "Hello?" she called, adrenaline racing through her veins. No response. She pressed forward, her breath quickening. A primal instinct pushed her deeper into the belly of the beast. Then an image caught her eye. A chalkboard scratched with erratic, jagged lines. It read, "They watch, they wait." Panic clawed at her throat, her heart hammering against her ribs. In that moment of dread, Sarah felt the temperature drop. The chill wrapped around her like icy fingers, suffocating and sinister. She turned, but found the way back blocked. Tall, dark shapes loomed at the doorways. Shadows twisted unnaturally, flickering like old film projected on a torn screen. Her legs turned to lead as whispers unwound around her, drowning out her thoughts. Her instincts screamed, "Run!" Just as she darted back, something cold brushed against her arm. She gasped, staring at the dark corner where the chill had originated. A small girl stood there, her face shadowed, but eyes gleaming with something unnatural. "Mommy." The girl's voice was a broken melody, filled with longing and despair. Sarah's breath hitched, her own world shattering around her. Was this girl lost? Was she a sign of all the children who had vanished? Before she could gather her thoughts, the darkness surged, whispering threats, promises twisted in malice. "Where are you?" Sarah shouted, but her own voice felt foreign, lost in the chaos of shadows. The girl didn't answer. Instead, the whisper swelled, ominous chants rising from unseen mouths. Panic surged. There was no way out. In that moment, Sarah realized it wasn't just the past haunting this place. It was coming for her now. Just as she turned to flee, the girl vanished, leaving only a lingering chill that swirled dangerously around her. As she stumbled back toward the doors, the shadows seemed to move, swirling closer, gripping her. A distant scream pierced the air, a chilling reminder that she wasn't alone. Then the world faded into darkness, and she could feel a pull dragging her back. What awaited her in the bleak corners of the school? Was there a way to save more than just herself? The darkness thickened around Sarah, an oppressive force that clawed at her senses. She felt the shadows coil around her legs like icy snakes, constricting her breath. Panic ignited. She fought against the pull, every ounce of her will pressed against the suffocating gloom. "Help!" Her voice was a mere whisper, drowned of the cacophony of the unseen. The whispering became a tidal wave, crashing over her mind. Just as she thought she could break free, a figure emerged from the shadows. It materialized before her, grotesque and shifting. A face she recognized at first, Mrs. Jones, twisted and writhing, eyes empty and mouth contorted into a silent scream. The reality of the school had blurred. The people who once lived around her were fading into these horrific shapes. Sarah's heart raced, a drumbeat of terror fueling her flight instinct. She stumbled back, the flashlight beam flickering erratically, as if the device itself trembled in fear. Her sanity strained as nightmare figures melted into one another, whispering secrets she couldn't comprehend. And then she saw it. The door. Just a few feet away, an escape from this hellish nightmare. But the shadows hungered. They slithered between her, an ever-thickening fog, pulling her back with spindly fingers that felt like icy needles pinching her skin. No time to think, she lunged for the door. Each step felt like running through molasses. The threshold drew closer, but the darkness roared with renewed fury, and Sarah felt an icy breath caress her neck. The voice, disembodied and sweetly sinister, rippled through her. "Stay with us. We are never alone." "Get away!" she howled, thrusting herself against the door, finally bursting through. Frigid air greeted her, but she didn't slow down. She raced into the night, the echoes of despair trailing behind her. The street was a still nightmare. The moon hung low, an unblinking eye surveying the silent town. Behind her, twisted forms swirled in the school's doorway, intertwining with dark whispers that promised eternal torment. She stumbled onto her lawn, gasping for breath as relief washed over her. She was free. But just as quickly, dread sinking in like a stone. Liam! The thought of her son brought fresh panic. She couldn't let him remain unaware of the evil creeping into their lives. Rushing inside, she slammed the door shut, locking it tight. The house felt wrong, too quiet. Shadows played along the walls, and the familiar creaks of the night felt menacing. "Liam!" she called out, her voice a desperate echo bouncing off the walls. No answer. Swallowing her panic, she darted down the hallway to his room. The door was slightly ajar. She hesitated, breath caught in her throat. Pushing it open, she found his bed empty, sheets rumpled, but no sign of him. "Liam!" she called again, dread tightening its grip. Each heartbeat thud loudly in her ears as she moved through the house looking for him, casting her flashlight into every corner. Then she heard it, a whisper, soft and sweet. From the living room, it danced through the air, the same haunting tone that had called to her in the school. "Mommy." Heart racing, she followed the sound, creeping through the doorway. The familiar warmth of home felt cold and warped. And there stood Liam, not alone. Shadows gathered around him, flickering and whispering secrets she could not hear. "Liam, no!" She lunged forward, but he was already turning, face alight with eerie calm. "Mommy, they want to play." A chill set over her like ice. What game had they begun? Did she finally uncover the darkness, or had she awakened something more? The whispers escalated as shadows writhed, wrapping around her son. Was it too late? Would her desperate cry for him be answered, or would they drag him down into the depths alongside her? "Liam!" The name clawed at her throat, desperation turning her voice raw as she lunged forward across the threshold. But the shadows tightened around her son, dark tendrils curling like serpents, eagerly wrapping him in their grasp. "Mommy, they want to play." His eyes gleamed with a hollow light that sent icy fingers of dread tingling down Sarah's spine. The soft, sweet voice echoed like a wind chime in a storm. She felt paralyzed. Terror rooted her feet to the floor, but her heart raced, pounding against her chest like a wild animal. "No, you can't play with them!" she screamed, every ounce of maternal instinct igniting her determination. The shadows pulsed and twisted, whispering in a language that felt ancient and wrong. A chill filled the room, creeping along her skin, while the air grew thick with a deep, suffocating darkness. "Mommy," Liam repeated, but now there was an edge to it, mocking, almost. "They want to show you." "Show me what?" Sarah stepped forward, arms outstretched, desperate to break the sinister tether binding her son to the shadow forms. But as she moved, the whispers crescendoed, wrapping around her, pooling in her mind, tempting her with visions of what lay beyond the veil. "How long have you played?" a voice whispered directly into her ear, dripping with bitterness. She shook her head. No, they had taken enough. She wouldn't let them take Liam. Get away from him! The shadows recoiled as she pressed against them, but their grip tightened momentarily, and Liam's laughter filled her ears, echoing like shattered glass in a vast chasm. "That's not how it works, Mommy," he said in a sing-song tone, the light in his eyes dimming, replaced by something darker, something wrong. "Liam!" She reached for him, fingers grazing the cold fabric of his pajama top as she felt the shadows wrap tighter around her wrist, pulling her further into the dark. "No, you have to let him go!" A guttural growl emanated from the shadows, reverberating in her chest as if her own heart were being torn asunder. "Join us. It's so much easier." A kaleidoscope of whispers flooded her mind, fragments of lives lost, cries for help, laughter twisted into wails. Each one clawed at her sanity, as if trying to pull out her very essence. Sarah stumbled back, her knees buckling, and she fell to the floor. Yet, even in her fall, she clutched at the familiar fabric of Liam's pajamas, trying to anchor herself to her son. "Mommy, I want to go with them." Liam's voice was slicing, a twisted dagger in her heart. He was losing himself, his innocence slipping away, and with it, Sarah's hope. "No, you're coming with me!" She yanked him closer, but the shadows hissed around them, urging her to let him go. Each whisper pulled at her like an anchor dragging her under. Suddenly, the room erupted into chaos. The shadows writhed as if in agony, their voices a cacophony of rage and sorrow. In that moment, Sarah saw them, faces trapped within the dark, their eyes wide with fear, mouths open in silent screams. "What are you?" she gasped, realizing the utter impossibility of her situation. "Lost, like you." The shadows spun faster, swirling around her, their voices melded. And just as it reached a terrifying climax, the house jolted. Somewhere, deep within the wrecked fabric of fear, an idea sparked. "Liam, come on!" She pulled harder, channeling every ounce of love into her hands, feeling the warmth of her son beneath her touch. The shadows wailed, thrashing as if trying to reshape the air around them. With one final heave, she yanked him free. They tumbled backwards. Breathless, Sarah shielded Liam with her body, the shadows retreating in a furious whirl, screeching like banshees. But the moment was fleeting. As silence descended again, Sarah's heart quickened once more. Had they truly escaped? "Mommy?" Liam's voice trembled, and she turned her gaze to him, feeling the icy grip of fear clutch her heart once more. He was there, yet somehow distant. what did you see?" His eyes fluttered, flickering with newfound depth. She realized then the shadows were not gone. In the weighty silence, they both felt it, the promise of a deeper darkness still lingering in the air. "We have to go." But even as she said it, an unsettling thought crept into her mind. Perhaps the shadows had only begun their play. Outside, the wind howled, as if waiting for them to step back into the cold night. What had she truly unleashed? The darkness could still be lurking, lying in wait for their next move. The moment felt suspended, the breath of the house holding tightly in its chest, as if it too feared the shadows that lurked beyond. Sarah's instinct screamed for her to flee, yet her limbs felt glued to the floorboards. The silence stretched until it was nearly unbearable. Liam shifted beside her, glancing up with eyes wide, a mixture of eagerness and fear. "Can we go back inside now?" he asked, a childish lilt masking an underlying dread. But for Sarah, that question hung heavy in the air like a thundercloud. "No, sweetie, we have to get far away from here," she murmured, guiding him towards the door. Each step felt like wading through thick fog, every creak of the old wood grating against her nerves. As they reached the front porch, the wind howled like a wild animal, chilling them to the bones. But Sarah felt something lurking just beneath that wind. It carried whispers, subtle but loaded with menace. She cast a quick glance back at the darkened house. It loomed there, an ancient beast, waiting patiently for its next meal. "Mommy?" Liam's voice was smaller now, barely a whisper amidst the wind's fury. "What if they come with us?" "No, they can't!" Panic surged through her veins, hot and electric. "We won't let them." But even as she asserted those words, doubt gnawed at her insides. What if the shadows were already inside him? They stepped down onto the lawn, and for a brief moment, everything felt calm. The air thickened, the oppressive sense of dread seemingly lifted. But it was deceptive, a trick. Then the shadows surged forth, cascading like a wave from the house's core. A dark torrent twisted and turned, stretching out with an unfathomable hunger. Sarah felt its approach like a physical force, slapping against her skin, sending icy tendrils crawling up her back. "Liam, run!" She twisted around, yanking at his small hand, urging him forward. But when she looked at him, something was off. His face was blank, as though the innocence had slipped to the background of his being. "Mommy, I want to play with them." "No!" The scream ripped from her throat, raw and primal. She felt the ground beneath shift, as if the earth itself was twisting in its effort to pull them back to where the shadows beckoned. In a frenzied rush, she dragged Liam away from the encroaching darkness. But as they ran, every instinct screamed to look back. This time, she did. She saw figures emerging from the black, a pair of elongated hands, skeletal and bony, reaching out as if to grasp her, to drag them back into that void. "Stay close," Sarah shouted, panic seeping into her voice. The darkness began to stretch, creeping like smoke, wrapping around the base of the porch, eager to snatch up anything it could find. They raced towards the gate, the air heavy with despair, and shadows clawing at their heels. The echoes of Liam's laughter echoed back in her mind, a haunting reminder of his innocence twisted into something sinister. They were playing, all right, but not a game she would ever want to witness. "Just a little closer, Mommy." His voice danced in her ears like a malevolent echo. "Stop!" She whirled around, desperation fueling her strength. "You're not Liam, not my son." But his face morphed in the moonlight, revealing flashes of something else beneath, something dark and seething with power. The shapes behind him shifted, their eyes glowing like coal. "Join us. You've played long enough." The shadows surged again, and this time they moved with a form of attention, reaching towards her both lovingly and threateningly. Sarah felt it enveloping them again, a cocoon made of despair and whispers. With a fierce resolve, she tightened her grip on Liam's hand, refusing to succumb. "We're stronger than you," she hissed defiantly. But as they neared the gate, she felt it, the pressure of eyes watching, thousands of those lost, trapped within the darkness. Their silent screams echoed in her head. "Mommy, we should stay." Liam's voice was a dull throb now, barely recognizable. The ominous presence crescendoed behind them, a final push from the shadows who still craved to reclaim their prey. With one last surge of energy, Sarah flung herself and Liam forward, bursting through the gate into the street. The shadows howled behind them, retreating, but she felt no relief. What had they truly escaped? The echoes of laughter danced in the wind, lingering like a curse. And as the fear churned within her, she realized they might be outside the house. But the shadows hadn't given up. Her heart pounded as an unsettling thought wormed its way into her mind. What if the darkness had followed them into the night? And then a chilling whisper floated on the breeze. "Playtime isn't over yet." Sarah stumbled onto the street, her heart hammering wildly against her chest. The cool night air felt sharp, a stark contrast to the crushing dread they had just escaped. But a wave of icy terror washed over her when she spotted the shadows creeping along the edges of her vision, slithering around lampposts and along the sidewalk. They were not done with them yet. "Mommy, can we go back home?" Liam's voice quivered, sending another jolt of alarm through Sarah. The innocence in his words felt wrong, warped by the night's horrors. "No, we can't," she insisted, forcing herself to keep a steady grip on his small hand as they hurried down the street. "We have to find a place, somewhere safe. Please, we need to find a way to get away from this." A burst of streetlights flickered above them, sending shadows flitting across the pavement. Something about each flash felt alive, as if they were dancing to a song only they could hear. Sarah felt her mind racing. What if it could see them? What if it knew exactly where they were going? "Mommy, I feel funny." Liam's voice, soft and fragile, cut through her thoughts like a knife. She turned to him, and in that moment, all rational thoughts fell away. His eyes, once bright and full of life, now swirled with darkness, an unsettling mirage of innocence lost. An incomprehensible weight pressed down on her, as if the shadows were toying with them from afar, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. A chill ran down her spine. "Liam, stay focused. Remember who you are." She shook his shoulders gently, searching for a flicker of her son beneath that eerie surface. "But, Mommy," his voice trailed off, almost hypnotic, as if he were losing the ability to fight whatever was creeping inside him. The world around them distorted. Townsfolk had begun to emerge, eyes glazed and unfocused, their vacant stares fixed in unseeing horror. The air thickened, choked with whispers full of malice. It was as if the night was alive, breathing heavily and pressing closer. "Help us," Sarah pleaded. But as she looked closer, the faces surrounding her transformed into familiar figures, twisted by darkness. Shadows masked their features, turning friends and neighbors into grim specters, their hands extended as if beckoning her into the depths of despair. "Join us, Sarah. This is the only way," one of them hissed. It sent a shudder through her bones. The voice, it was her sister, someone she had lost to the shadows long ago. "No, you're not real," she screamed, her voice resonating in the thick air. The crowd echoed her words, creating a chorus of agony. Liam tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, please, I want to play." "No!" Panic surged again, wild and raw. "You're not Liam! You can't be! Fight it, baby!" Flashes of pain and despair wrapped around her like barbed wire as screams swirled within her mind. Then, in a sudden moment of clarity, she felt it, a pull, a beckoning from both her child and the shadows. It called to her, promising safety, love, and not a single moment of worry if she just let go. "No!" she cried again, shaking her head violently, pushing through the thrumming chaos. She turned and sprinted, dragging Liam with her, their feet pounding against the pavement, but the shadows latched onto them, clawing at her soul, hungry to claim what was theirs. She dashed towards the furthest corner of the neighborhood, the old park where she used to take him as a toddler. The swing set stood broken, just as she remembered it. Dark trees loomed like sentinels, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky. "Mommy, I'm tired," Liam panted, his small legs faltering. "Just a little further, sweetie." Her own voice rang hollow as doubt passed like a storm through her heart. Could she keep them both safe? But there was nowhere left to run. A sharp cry sliced through the air. "Stay with us." The shadows surged, emerging like a tidal wave, dragging at their heels. Suddenly, the ground beneath her shook, splitting open, revealing a darkness of abyss. Sarah felt the weight of despair crush down upon her. She turned back to Liam, staring into the depths of the sharp void that now split the park apart. "Mommy," his cry snapped her back. "Hold on, I won't let go." But as she reached for him, the darkness pulled back, reaching hungrily towards her, as if it knew the tiniest hesitation could seal their fates. A trickle of doubt seeped into her mind. Could she truly resist? Could either of them? Something deep inside Sarah whispered that choice was not in their hands anymore. A final surge of shadows reached for them, and she felt the warmth of the last flicker of Liam's essence start to fade. Suddenly they were all losing ground, shifting into the abyss of terror. "Liam, please!" she shouted desperately, just as a ghastly grin spread across the faces of those shadows. And then every whispering voice came together in a dreadful chant. "Come play with us." What will it take to escape the darkness? The ground felt alive beneath Sarah's feet, as if it churned with the horror rising around them. The all-consuming darkness clawed at her, whispering false promises of peace. Shadows swirled, dancing in a twisted ballet, taunting her with the familiar faces of her loved ones. "Mommy!" Liam's voice broke through her panic, fragile like glass. He was still there, reachable. She could almost see the flickering light in his eyes, buried amidst the dark fog. "Stay with me," she shouted, her heart racing, as she pulled him closer. But the weight despair hung like an anchor. The split in the ground widened, exhaling a breath of icy dread. Each shuddering gasp pulled at them, merging hope and despair into a suffocating coil. Blurs of motion surrounded her, and the crowd, this grotesque assembly of once beloved faces, demanded her surrender. "You cannot fight what you don't understand." A low murmur danced through the air, slithering into her ears like venom. "No!" she cried, shaking her head, a desperate attempt to clear the fog swirling around them. "You're not real. This is not who you are." "Join us in the shadows," an echoing voice chimed, resembling her sister's, yet twisted into something monstrous. The shadow seemed to vibrate in response, eager for her compliance, smiling in that nightmarish way. Liam shifted, his grip slackening, and Sarah's heart dropped. "Mommy, I'm scared." He was so small, lost in this nightmare that was spiraling around them like a living creature. "I'm here! I'm right here!" Panic ignited within her, wild and uncontrollable. She needed to protect him, her baby, her world. But where was the safe place she had promised? A wave of darkness engulfed them, a hungry maw ready to swallow them whole. "Let go," it sang, its lure wrapping around her, beckoning her towards the abyss. The ground trembled again, and Sarah stumbled back, her voice thick with emotion. "Please, just hold on." She felt herself wavering, the shadows groaning, reaching toward her with a cruel inevitability. In a heartbeat, she was in front of the void, staring into its depth. It pulsed, drawing her in, almost whispering secrets she wished to know, wicked promises of reunion with those lost. "Mommy!" Liam's urgent plea cut through the tempting sound, and Sarah quickly turned to him. "I'm not losing you!" she screamed into the chaos. Just then, a finger of shadow grasped at Liam's small form, wrapping around his ankle like a spider's web. He jerked in surprise, his eyes wide with terror. "Mommy!" Sarah lunged, snatching him from the grasp of darkness. The shadows recoiled, hissing in disappointment. For a scattered moment, the surroundings went silent, as if the world was holding its breath, awaiting her next move. But that wasn't enough. The edges of their shrinking world began to close in, pressing against her, stealing her air. She could feel the shadows pulling on her fear, savoring her desperation. Each second felt like an eternity. "Run!" She shoved Liam forward, and he stumbled, eyes wide. She gripped his hand tightly, their fingers interlocking like the lifelines they both desperately needed. The whispers built into a cacophony, the crowd's faces morphing, swirling, blending into an enigma of dread. "Come back, Sarah! Come back to us!" It was a powerful lure, drowning out her thoughts, flooding her mind with the agony of uncertainty. Suddenly, a flicker of light pierced through the encroaching dark. A faint glimmer reflected off a nearby bench, bathed in the pale glow of the streetlight. "There!" she cried, hope igniting anew. We can make it!" With determination surging through her, Sarah pulled Liam toward the light. The shadows screamed and howled, a tidal wave of fury as they rushed upon them, but she didn't look back. Doubts fought against her resolve, the memories, the whispers, the sorrow. But in the face of fear, she pressed on, weaving through fading figures, determined to reach safety. Just a little more! As they hurtled onward, Sarah stumbled again, the ground beneath them still restless. The light ahead flickered, and she could barely breathe. The pressure to succumb washed over her like a relentless tide. Then it happened. A hand shot out from the depths, reaching for Liam, not to take him, but to reveal something monstrous, something sinister, lurking just beyond what she could see. "Help me!" The raspy voice clawed at her ears, a haunting plea that sent chills down her spine. And in that moment of hesitation, Sarah looked back, confronting the darkness orchestrated into a thick cloak behind them. Was it truly gone, or merely waiting for their mistake? Liam's grip tightened, terror carving his face into a mask she feared she might never see again. With desperation clawing at her throat, she yelled, "Liam, keep running!" But she felt the ominous presence looming, waiting and hungry. What kind of horrors lurked in the shadows ahead? Would the light they ran toward save them or lead them deeper into the fright? The light flickered again, more desperately this time, as if sharing in her fear. Sarah pushed Liam ahead of her, but closeness to the light sent a bone-chilling realization through her. Its glow was deceptive, an invitation rather than a sanctuary. Sweat trickled down her back, the icy fingers of dread clawing at her, forcing her to question every step. "Mommy, please," Liam gasped, his small body trembling against the overpowering darkness. The shadows pulsed and writhed around them, filling the air with a low, malicious hum that echoed her fears. "It's okay, buddy," she lied, more for her own comfort than his. "Just a little further." But as they moved, the ground beneath them groaned, and the shadowy figures began to solidify into shapes, grotesque and familiar, faces twisted in agony. They reached out with elongated limbs, desperate to pull Sarah back into their fold. "Remember us?" came a chorus of voices, some sweet, others haunting. Each syllable wrapped around her mind, seeping in like poison. "You loved us once. You loved us still." "No!" Sarah screamed, forcing her feet to move. Each step felt like dragging a boulder behind her. She could feel the fear sink into her bones, freezing her in place. Weariness scraped at the edges of her resolve, threatening to pull her down. Liam cried out, the sound piercing through the chaos. She turned back to him, heart racing. "Keep moving, sweetheart. Don't look back." But Liam hesitated, his eyes locked on to something behind her. He pointed. "Mommy, look!" With a surge of panic, she turned, eyes widening. She witnessed a shift in the air. Shadows were coalescing into something indescribable, horrific and unyielding. The air felt thick with malice, and for an instant, Sarah could see what their loves had become. Souls bound by despair, lost to the thoughts that consumed them. "Help us, Sarah! You abandoned us!" they wailed, voices merging into a cacophony of agony that echoed through the night. Just as she thought they could drown in their sorrow, the shadows erupted, morphing into the figures that had once brought her joy. "No!" She covered her ears, stumbling backward as memories washed over her like icy water. Her sister, her parents, faces twisted with hurt and rage, reaching for her, demanding her return. "You can't keep running from who you are. Stay away!" She fought against the lurching grip of terror, her heart hammering loudly. Then she saw the flicker of light dimming behind her, as if reeling from the darkness that wrapped around them. "Mommy!" Liam wailed as a shadow swept close, glancing off him. He recoiled, crying more fiercely, and suddenly Sarah knew they were losing ground. Steeling her nerves, she grabbed Liam's hand, urgency galvanizing her. "We need to go, now!" Her mind raced, pushing every thought aside except for his safety. They turned to run, bolting towards the flickering light that felt more like a flickering hope. The shadows screamed, tales of despair wrapping around her ankles, trying to claw them back into the void. "You cannot escape your past, Sarah!" Just then, she felt a tugging at her hair, as if the darkness itself wished to claim her. With a fierce resolve, she charged onward, willing her body to keep moving despite the heavy weight of despair pulling her back. "Don't look back!" she shouted again, feeling the shadows licking against her heels. Liam stumbled, but Sarah yanked him up. They were almost there. She could taste the air of freedom, so close. It felt like a lifeline being tossed to a drowning person. And then a blinding light erupted in front of them, illuminating their path. But it was no ordinary light. It pulsated with energy, shifting as if breathing. In the core of it, she saw something, a silhouette of a figure standing in the midst, waiting. "Mommy?" Liam's voice faltered, fear creeping in. Sarah's heart flooded with dread. She could feel the shadows retreating slightly. But something about that figure wasn't right. The light seemed to distort around it, the shadows recoiling in its presence. Liam's hand trembled in hers, and Sarah hesitated for a second, uncertainty flooding her thoughts. Was this where they would find true safety, or another trap disguised as hope? "Let's go," she whispered, unsure if it was to reassure Liam or herself. Together, they surged forward, towards that shimmering enigma, the whispers of the shadows lingering behind, promising to return. As they neared the light, the ominous figure stepped forward, and Sarah felt the ground tremble beneath them once more. "Welcome." Its voice slithered, smooth and deep, filled with the menace of the dark place they were leaving behind. Liam gasped, "Mommy, what's happening?" As the figure emerged fully into view, the air thickened with fear. Could it be salvation, or had they just run straight into the heart of their darkest nightmare? The shadows surged back, roaring their defiance, desperate to reclaim what they had lost. Would they find their escape here, or would this light bring them deeper into the darkness? The figure slowly detached itself from the luminous heart of the light, revealing a face that felt achingly familiar, yet horrifyingly twisted. It wore a smile that curved like a knife, sharp and cruel. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as recognition hit. This was someone she once loved, someone she had failed. "Sarah, I've missed you." The figure cooed, voice dripping with false sweetness. It reached out a hand, fingers elongated, grasping through the air like calculating shadows. The light pulsed around it, flickering between warmth and a searing cold. "No!" Panic seized her. "You're not! I can't! Liam, we have to go!" But Liam stood frozen, confusion painting his small face. He looked at Sarah, then back at the figure, tempted by its allure. "Mommy, who is that?" With every second, the figure's smile widened, its gaze locking onto Liam as if he were the prize it had long awaited. "Don't you want to see her? She has so many secrets to share." "Leave him alone!" Sarah screamed, the words tearing from her throat in a desperate plea. She tugged at Liam's hand, trying to pull him away, but he resisted, future and past colliding in his eyes. The shadows roared, their chorus of anger drowning out her voice. "You can't fight your destiny, Sarah!" they shrieked, echoing through the dimly lit expanse like distorted echoes of her own fears. And then the ground beneath them shuddered violently. Sarah stumbled, clutching Liam's hand so tight her knuckles turned white. The figure leaned closer, the light surrounding it bending, creeping towards Sarah and Liam, creating a rift in the air itself. "Come closer, sweetheart. I'll show you the truth about your mother." Panic surged through Sarah. "It's lying, Liam. Don't listen." She felt the weight of dread grasping at her heart, pulling her deeper into despair. She could hear the whispers wrap around her, mocking her. "You abandoned us, Sarah. You can never run from the truth." In that moment, the shadow seemed to pulse and swell, thundering toward them like a tidal wave of darkness. Sarah's instincts kicked into overdrive. She tightened her grip on Liam, spun him away from the figure and that dreadful pull, and began to run again. The pulsating light behind them flickered dangerously, and she could feel the air growing heavy with malice, threatening to crush them with its weight. Liam followed her lead this time, terror-fueled adrenaline propelling them forward. "Mommy!" he cried, breathless, and with every step Sarah vowed to protect him no matter the cost. They dashed into the thickening darkness, the figures shifting behind them, clawing at their heels, voices intertwining in a maddening symphony of past and present. "What if it's a trick? What if we aren't safe here?" Liam's voice trembled, fear now evident in every syllable. "Just trust me." The resolve in her voice fought against the rising terror. They stumbled through the vastness, searching for an exit, a sliver of hope inside that brilliant confusion of light and dark. The ground trembled violently once more, and Sarah swayed, her knees nearly buckling beneath the onslaught of despair. Suddenly, the light intensified again, casting twisted shadows against the walls around them. The figure remained at the edge of its glow, mocking their escape. "You can't lose me again, Sarah. You brought this upon yourself." "What does it want?" Liam whimpered, clutching at his mother's side. "I don't know," she shouted back, her breath coming out in ragged gasps as the shadows reached closer. She could feel the pull of their sorrow wrapping around her like a shroud. "We need to find a way out now. We can't give in." But just as hope flickered on the horizon, she noticed something odd. The figure in the light was changing, morphing, becoming something more sinister. The shadows weren't receding, they were waiting, coiling around them with silken threads of despair. "Mommy, look out!" Before she could react, the figure lunged forward, its hand extending, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. And then, everything went black. As Sarah fought to maintain her consciousness, guilt and regret surged through her, memories flooding her mind. What if this was all her fault? As her vision flickered, she grasped desperately for Liam's hand, knowing they were still neck-deep in danger. What had she opened when she entered that light? And, amid shadows and echoes, would the past finally consume them both? In the suffocating darkness, Sarah clawed her way back to consciousness, heart racing like a war drum. The remnants of shadows whispered around her, each secret laden with dread. But in the haze of fear, one truth shimmered brighter than the rest. She needed to find Liam. "Liam!" she gasped, panic surging through her as raw as the chill that enveloped her. Desperately, she pushed against the weight of the void, every part of her straining to escape its grasp. Then it came, a flicker of movement. She could see a dim light ahead, pulsating like a heartbeat, and with it, a figure danced along the edges of clarity. It was there, swayed and twisted, that familiar, grotesque face mingled with the shadows. "Come to me, Sarah," it beckoned, voice rippling through the gloom with a seductive ease. The shadows around it swooped closer, hungry for despair. They reached out like clawed fingers, hungry and wanting. "No," she growled, shaking her head violently. "You're not my sister. You're not real." But as she stood her ground, the voices of the shadows soared, melding together into a tormenting cacophony. "You abandoned us. You belong with us." Breath hitching in her throat, panic spiraled as the darkness surged forward, snapping at her heels. She turned and ran, her feet pounding against a shifting ground, urging her to flee deeper into the light. "Liam!" she cried again, desperation clawing at her voice. Then, through the murky shadows, she saw him. A small figure standing frozen, eyes wide and terrified, silhouetted against the dull light. Her heart leaped at the sight of her son. But as she tried to rush toward him, the darkness churned and swelled like a storm, eager to swallow them both whole. "Liam, run to me!" she shouted, her voice cracking under the weight of fear. Then, through the murky shadows, she saw him. A small figure standing frozen, eyes wide and terrified, silhouetted against the dull light. Her heart leaped at the sight of her son. But as she tried to rush toward him, the darkness churned and swelled like a storm, eager to swallow them both whole. "Liam, run to me!" she shouted, her voice cracking under the weight of fear. But he stayed there, confusion etched into his small face as the dark tendrils tried to wrap around him, coaxing him closer to the malignant figure. "Mommy, I don't want to leave." His voice trembled, filled with a longing that sent a spear through her heart. "No, you have to come," she begged, her heart pounding louder than the shadows. "We have to fight." The thrumming darkness hissed, creeping closer, but she felt an inexplicable pull from within, an ancient power coursing through her veins, ignited by fierce resolve. "Stay away from him," she shouted, willing her body to be the shield between Liam and the shadows. And courage flooded her, electrifying as it rushed through her bloodstream. Summoning every ounce of strength, Sarah lunged forward. "Liam, I'm here!" In that moment, a pure spark ignited between them, a golden halo that cut through the suffocating darkness. The shadows recoiled from the light, howling with fury. "Mommy!" Liam broke free, stumbling toward her as if pulled by an unseen force. He grasped her hand, and together they became a single unit of defiance against the encroaching void. The light around them grew brighter, illuminating the twisted figures that hovered just out of reach, their shrieks spiraling into incoherent madness. But Sarah was no longer afraid. "We are not lost. You will not take us," she cried, her voice firm and unwavering. With every word, the golden energy surged around them, enveloping them in warmth. The shadows shrank back, momentarily dazed. "Remember who you are," she shouted, gripping Liam's hand tighter, channeling every ounce of love into their connection. "You're my son. We come from light." In that instant, she felt him, her brave little boy, and the bond between them flexed like a muscle, flooding the entire space with brilliant light. Shadows writhed and twisted as if they were caught in a tempest. "Mommy!" Liam's voice rang clear now, filled with innocence and strength. "I'm here. I remember." And suddenly, the chaotic harmony transformed. The once menacing shadows flickered like fading embers. "No!" they shrieked, voices layered with wrath. "Come back!" But Sarah wasn't listening anymore. The entities that had haunted her, that had preyed on her fears, were beginning to crumble. With a rush of defiance, she and Liam charged toward the pulsing light ahead, breaking through the lingering darkness that had sought to claim them. Then they were free. Emerging from the dark, they found themselves in a sunlit clearing, warm and inviting, like a long-lost embrace. The air was fresh, filled with sweet scents that wrapped around them, a stark contrast to the bitter tendrils they had escaped. Liam turned to her, eyes filled with wonder. "Did we win, Mommy?" "Yes," she breathed, heart swelling with a fierce love. "We did." But even as she held him close, a flicker of anxiety lingered among the joy. What if the darkness lingered? What if it tried to come back? In that moment, however, she knew they were stronger together. They had faced the oppressive shadows and had emerged, intertwined with light. "Let them come," she whispered, hand in hand with her son. "We'll face them again if we have to." With Liam smiling brightly at her side, the two walked onward into a future shimmering with hope, knowing that no shadow could conquer the bond they held. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.